The sun was sinking low when the rancher saw the man collapse near the dry arroyo. At first, he thought it was just another mirage born from heat and dust, the kind that played tricks on tired eyes. But then, the figure moved, just slightly, and a dark stain spread across his buckskin shirt. The rancher's hand tightened around the reins. In this land, stopping could cost you your life, but riding past would cost him his soul. Caleb Mercer had lived on the frontier long enough to know the rules everyone whispered but never wrote down. You minded your own business. You didn't get involved in old conflicts. And you certainly didn't approach a wounded native man alone, miles from town, with no law in sight. Stories of retaliation, revenge, and bloodshed floated through saloons like smoke. Yet as Caleb dismounted, filling his canteen with the last of his water, those stories felt small compared to the shallow, rattling breaths coming from the man. On the ground, the wounded man's eyes fluttered open when Caleb knelt beside him. They were dark and sharp despite the pain, filled with fear but also pride. A deep gash crossed his side, likely from a rifle shot, and dried blood clung to his skin. Caleb raised both hands slowly, careful, showing he meant no harm. He unscrewed the canteen and held it out, letting a few drops fall onto the cracked earth before bringing it closer to the man's lips. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then the man drank, slowly, carefully, as if testing not just the water, but the intent behind it. Caleb tore a strip from his shirt and pressed it gently against the wound. The man flinched, but didn't pull away. There were no words spoken language. Would have failed them anyway, but something unspoken passed between them. Recognition. Two men shaped by the same hard land, both trying to survive it without losing who they were. The sound of hooves came like thunder. Caleb froze. At first it was distant, like a storm rolling in from the horizon. Then it grew louder, sharper, unmistakable. Horses, many of them. His heart slammed against his ribs as he slowly stood, turning toward the rising dust cloud. Shapes emerged, dozens of riders cresting the ridge, silhouettes dark against the burning sky. Rifles glinted. Feathers streamed. The earth itself seemed to tremble beneath their charge. Every warning Caleb had ever heard screamed in his mind. He was alone. No cover, no escape. He could already imagine how this story would be told in town, if it was told at all. The wounded man struggled to sit up, panic flashing across his face. He spoke urgently in his own language, his voice weak, but fierce. Caleb didn't understand the words, but he understood the meaning. Run. Caleb didn't. He stepped in front of the wounded man instead, hands open at his sides. He could feel his knees shaking, but he held his ground. If this was the end, he would face it standing. The riders reached them in seconds, forming a wide circle. Horses snorted. Dust hung thick in the air. A tall elder dismounted and walked forward, his presence calm and commanding. His eyes moved from Caleb to the wounded man, then back again sharp, assessing, searching for truth. The wounded man spoke again, louder this time. He pointed at Caleb, then at the canteen, then at the blood-soaked cloth pressed against his side. The elder listened without interrupting. Silence stretched long and heavy. Caleb felt sweat trickle down his spine as the elder stepped closer. Looked at Caleb not with hatred, but with something far more unsettling curiosity. You gave him water? The elder finally said, his English slow but clear. Yes, Caleb replied, his voice hoarse. He was dying. The elder nodded once. Then he raised his hand. Caleb braced himself instead of a weapon. The elder placed his palm against his chest in a gesture of respect. Around them, the tension shifted, like a bowstring finally released. Several riders dismounted. One brought herbs, another brought clean cloth. They lifted the wounded man with care, speaking softly to him, reassuring him that he was not alone. Only, then did Caleb realize his legs were trembling? So badly he had to kneel? The tribe had been searching for their scouts since dawn. He had been ambushed while tracking strangers moving through their landmen who did not respect boundaries, who brought violence without cause. The scout would have died in the dust if not for a rancher who chose compassion over fear. They invited Caleb to ride with them to their camp. Every instinct told him to refuse. But something deeper told him this moment mattered, that walking away now would mean turning his back on something rare and fragile. So he mounted his horse and followed, heart pounding, into territory most men only spoke of in rumors. The camp sat in a wide valley, alive with movement and warmth. Children paused their games to stare. Women worked over fires, their eyes watchful but not unkind. The wounded scout was taken to a lodge where healers went to work immediately. The elders stayed with Caleb, offering him food and water, treating him not as a threat, but as a guest. That night, Caleb sat beneath a sky crowded with stars, listening to stories told in a language older than any fence or deed. Though he didn't understand every word, he understood the heart of them, stories of land, loss, endurance, and honor. Stories not so different from his own. By morning, word had spread. The man who gave water. The man who did not ride away. Before Caleb left, the elder approached him once more. "The land remembers," he said. "So do we." Weeks later, when trouble came to Caleb's ranch, when armed men arrived with greed in their eyes and threats on their tongues, it was the sound of hooves that returned. Not as a storm this time, but as a promise kept. Riders appeared on the ridge, watching, waiting. Intruders left without a fight. No words were exchanged that day. None were needed. Caleb often thought back to that moment by the arroyo too. The simple choice that changed everything. He had learned that courage was not the absence of fear, but the decision to act with humanity despite it. That compassion could cross any boundary drawn by history, and that sometimes smallest kindness, a sip of water in the desert, could echo farther than gunfire ever could, in a world shaped by conflict. One act of mercy had rewritten a story, and the land, just as the elder said, remembered.